I'm really excited to be bringing you a beginner's inversion practice. This is not a very long practice because there are a few very simple things that we need to work on in order to be prepared to do inversion. So our inversions are things like our forearm stand, our handstand, our headstand, our crow pose, anything that you're bringing yourself upside down and hanging out upside down looking at the world from a different way. It's something that is a traditional advanced yogi exercise, and I want to change that narrative by teaching you ways that you can practice so that you can eventually someday do any variation of an inversion. So a couple key things with this: grab a pillow, make sure you're set up near a wall because you're going to need to be set up near a wall to work on this. We're going to be working on some shoulder mobility, some core activation, and just kind of some practice putting weight on our wrists and hands, okay? So get set up near that wall and let's get started. So the very first thing we're going to do is prepare our wrists. So you're going to come onto your knees or your hands and knees. You're going to turn your hands so that the butt of your hand is facing the short edge of your mat. Come onto your fingertips and you're just going to lean that weight a little bit onto your hands. I don't have very much weight on my hands right now, and you shouldn't either because we're just starting to prepare, okay? So you're just rocking back and forth. And as you get a little more comfortable, you may find that you can put a little more weight onto those hands. So maybe pressing one forward and then the other. So this is just working on getting weight onto our hands. Now, when you're doing this, it's also practicing not putting weight on this part of your hand. It's putting the weight on your fingertips and your knuckles, which you'll always hear me say in downward facing dogs, is to put the weight on the fingertips and the knuckles. And then this heel of the hand doesn't have very much weight on it, okay? So that is what we are doing. Just kind of rocking back and forth. Your hands can come right off or they can stay on. A couple more. 2. And 1. Good. From here, you can kind of roll those out. You're going to put the weight on the hands. You're going to hitch the toes under the feet. And you're going to come into a downward facing dog, which, by the way, is an inversion. So if you can do a down dog, you are kind of already doing an inversion. So you're going to make sure that that weight is on the knuckles and the fingertips. And then all you're going to do is start to walk up on your toes, your feet closer to your hands. Okay, keeping the weight on your hands. So it's not all on your hands, obviously, but a lot of it is. And then just walk back out until you feel good there, and then walk it back in. So all you're doing is putting weight more on your shoulders. And I know that you might not have the mobility that I do, or you may have more. Bend your knees if you need to get them closer, okay? But get that weight on the hands. So you can bend those knees and just keep walking back and forth. Practicing putting that weight onto those hands. One more time. And walk it back. Good, come back down on those knees. That probably put a lot more pressure than what you're used to on those hands and wrists, and that's okay. But we are gonna counteract it just by doing a little stretch. Bringing that hand in towards you, gently putting pressure. And then the other side, and you go back and forth. And then just get the flow back into the fingers. Jazz hands. I can't help myself, I'm sorry. Good. The other thing we need to work on is getting a little bit better mobility in those shoulders so that we can control in those shoulders. So you're going to turn yourself so that your back is facing a wall. And then you're just going to take the hands behind you. So my head just hit the wall. So I'm going to move a little further forward. I'm not worrying about getting into a back arch. I'm really just worried about reaching my fingertip back to the wall and walking down. Okay? And then walking back up. So really thinking about getting those elbows up beside the head and then back down the wall, okay? So just making sure you're not going sideways, because that's too much on your shoulder. You gotta work on getting those shoulders up. And what that's gonna work on is getting your shoulder blades to sit where they're supposed to for inversion practices. They're just coming back and down, and then coming back up. And if you're like me, you probably dominantly went to one side. Go to the other, and come back. And one side's probably easier than the other. So do it the same number of times. And one more. Oh, see, I went sideways there. Go up and back and up and back. Good. So you're probably gonna find that one, if you're tight wearing tight, you definitely found that one hurt in your, or didn't hurt, but pulled a little bit in your shoulders and in through your back. So we're just gonna roll that out again. We're actually gonna come down onto our bums, because another key part of inversion practices is to have a nice strong core. So we're gonna work on boat pose with a few variations. So you're gonna start with your feet flat on the floor, knees are bent. You're gonna find those core muscles and you're gonna tuck them in. So find your belly button, push it back. Don't push it back with your fingers. Pull it back with your muscles and then suck it up to your heart. Good. So you got that core contraction there. And then you're going to take those hands out in front of you. You're gonna lean back just slightly, still holding that core contraction. If you lose the core contraction, you come back and you start again, just rolling it back as far as you can. You can keep going with that. If you're finding that really challenging, that is step one for that core. Suck it in and up and roll it back as far as you can. Now, if you've got that and you're leaned back, you're on those sits bones, which are those bones right there. You're on those sits bones, you've got that core contraction. You're like, yeah, okay, I'm ready. Lift the feet without rolling back on your tailbone or losing that back arch, okay? So come back as needed. Every time you need to, you just come back, you lift. Come back, contract, lift. Or lift and hold if that's where you're at. If that's still not quite challenging enough, extend those legs. This is gonna work through your quads a lot more and your hip flexors, which you do actually also need for your inversions. So start with that, extend as you can, come back as you need to. Extend as you can, come back as you need to. So you just keep moving through the variations wherever you're at, because we're all at different places in our positioning. I just can't talk and hold those safely at the same time. So really thinking about that belly button into the spine, up to the heart, so that you've got that nice core contraction. You can also think about it as your hip bone coming towards your rib cage, so that you're really getting that core contraction, kind of like a corset pulling through and around. So you've got that core contraction. Got one more try wherever you're at here, practicing those variations. And then we're gonna release down to the floor. And I just want you to come right over and onto those hands again. Now, we're gonna come out to a nice wide stance. And we're gonna, again, make sure we're secure through the knuckles and the fingertips, not the heel of the hand. So technically you're lifting that heel of the hand without actually like lifting it right up. So you're lifting in through there. You're out in that nice wide stance. Bring the head down like you would for a handstand, and bring the weight onto your knuckles. That might be your starting position. If you're ready to increase the challenge a little bit more, all you're gonna do is lift one foot and then set it back down when you need to. Get back in that position, weight on the knuckles and the fingertips, lift the other foot. That's all you're doing, is just rocking back and forth there, or just practicing putting the weight on the knuckles and the fingertips. Now, if you're finding that that's not quite challenging enough, here is your next step. And you're gonna lift that foot, bring it up to the hand or the wrist, put it back. Other side, lift, put it back. And just keep moving from side to side, practicing that weight on the knuckles and the fingertips. That's the key thing, and keeping your head down. The other thing you might find that happens is that your shoulders start to shrug into your ears. Really practice. If you're pushing through the knuckles and the fingertips, you should also be squeezing those shoulders away from the ears. So squeezing them down your back. And just practice stepping it forward or just lifting one side and then the other. And eventually we'll build up enough strength to be ready to kick up and into some handstands. But we're not there today. This is beginner, not going. Couple more tries, and then I just want you to come into a forward bend, roll out those wrists, let your head release, wiggle it out, shake it out. And that is your beginner practice for inversions. So do that, a couple times a week. If you're really serious about doing inversions, you might want to make sure you're doing it 3 to 4 times a week. And eventually you'll know when you're ready to move to the moving into inversions practice.